if people in that report are still fighting to keep their names private, Sean, they have no legal basis to do so.
She was so adamant. That was Trump Attorney General Pam Bondi, of course, just last year, before she was Trump's Attorney General, saying that people named in government files related to Jeffrey Epstein had no legal basis for keeping their names private. Bondi went on to lay out a very specific and narrow set of exceptions. Take a listen.
They have no legal basis to do so unless they're a child, a victim, or a cooperating defendant.
Okay, so to make the point very clear, that was Trump's own attorney general just last year, saying that not only that files related to Jeffrey Epstein should be released, but that the only names that should be allowed to be redacted from those files should be the names of children, victims, and cooperating defendants. Fast forward to today, and Bloomberg News is reporting that the FBI redacted President Trump's name in the Epstein files. Now, I should say that NBC News has not independently confirmed that reporting, and the White House, the FBI, and the Justice Department all declined to respond or did not respond to Bloomberg's request for comment on that story. But last I checked, Trump was not a child, nor was he a victim or a cooperating defendant in the Epstein case. The FBI reportedly had 1,000 agents pulling all-nighters, pouring through more than 100,000 documents related to Epstein. And people familiar with the matter tell Bloomberg that the FBI identified numerous references to Trump in that process and then blacked them out. Now, of course, the appearance of any names in the files does not mean necessarily that the named people did anything wrong, and Trump's name was not the only one blocked out. They also blocked out the names of other high-profile individuals as well. But I could have sworn Pam Bondi said there would be no legal basis for doing that, right? That's what she said a year ago. Now, the other major piece of news we got on this story today was about Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was, of course, convicted of sex trafficking minors. Now, after spending 9 hours over 2 days just last week meeting with Trump's former criminal defense attorney turned Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, where no one knows any details of or who else was there, today, Ghislaine Maxwell was moved to a minimum security federal prison camp called Camp Bryan in Texas. Now, if the name of that prison rings a bell, it may be because among its current inmates are celebrity prisoners like Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes, who was convicted of defrauding investors out of hundreds of millions of dollars, and Real Housewives of Salt Lake City star Jen Shah, who was convicted of conspiracy to commit wire fraud related to a telemarketing scheme that tricked elderly people. Employees of Camp Bryan describe security at the facilities being generally lax. The minimum security facilities does not keep prisoners under strict watch and gives them some freedom within the camp because the inmates there are considered low-level security risks. Now, I don't want to downplay, and I'm not in any way trying to downplay the damage and pain that Elizabeth Holmes or Jen Shah caused their victims, but there is a massive substantive difference between the kinds of white-collar crimes they committed and the horrific sex crimes Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of. In a statement today, victims and the family members of victims that were preyed upon by Epstein and Maxwell wrote, President Trump has sent a clear message today. Pedophiles deserve preferential treatment, and their victims do not matter. Ghislaine Maxwell is a sexual predator who physically assaulted minor children on multiple occasions, and she should never be shown any leniency. Yet without any notification to the Maxwell victims, the government overnight has moved Maxwell to a minimum security luxury prison in Texas. This is the justice system failing victims right before our eyes. And while a senior administration official told NBC News tonight that any false assertion Ghislaine Maxwell was given preferential treatment is absurd, that's what they say, that's their statement. According to the Bureau of Prisons' own policies, Ghislaine Maxwell was not eligible to be transferred to this prison. A federal prison expert told NBC that the Bureau of Prisons management can waive those rules, but it's extremely rare, and he had never heard of it happening before. As one employee of the Bryan, Texas prison camp told NBC today, if someone has a history of sex offense, of violent crime, they are not supposed to be there. So why was Ghislaine Maxwell transferred there, and who made it happen? Congressman Robert Garcia, the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, wrote to the head of the Federal Bureau of Prisons today and warned, quote, the favorable change to the conditions of Miss Maxwell's incarceration, despite being denied bail on 3 occasions for posing an extreme risk of flight, raises possibility that the Trump administration and the Bureau of Prisons may be affording Miss Maxwell preferential treatment in an effort to shape or distort her testimony about Jeffrey Epstein. And joining us now is the author of that letter, Congressman Robert Garcia, ranking member on the House Oversight Committee and a Democrat from California. Congressman, let me start. You wrote the letter to the director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons seeking answers, which I think everybody would like to have. What do you want to know most?
Well, we're very concerned. I mean, this continues to get more bizarre every single day. I mean, why is Ghislaine Maxwell being sent to essentially a much lighter prison? Some have described it as much cushier. She's going to be able to roam more freely when she's actually not eligible for this move. And so this happens just right after, of course, this meeting between Trump's DOJ, or quite frankly, Trump's personal lawyer, Todd Blanche, who has now been, of course, working with Ms. Maxwell and the legal team. And for this to happen right after that, I think raises serious questions. We've seen and heard Trump's comments, of course, in the press. He is not ruling out a pardon. Mike Johnson, Republicans continue to somehow lionize and set the stage possibly for a future pardon for Ms. Maxwell. And so all of this, I think, begs very serious questions. And at the end of the day, we have to get back to something very simple, which is, what is Donald Trump hiding? What is this cover-up that the White House is now involved with? Why are they treating Ms. Maxwell this way, who, by the way, is a convicted sex predator? This is someone that has lied under oath, that has done horrific things, caused massive trauma and violence to young women and to girls. And so it's all concerning. We have a series of questions for the Bureau of Prisons, and we need answers. What is going on in this case?
What happens? They haven't exactly been cooperative. I don't want to prejudge, but what happens if they don't reply and don't give you answers to the questions you're justifiably asking and everybody wants to know?
Well, the Bureau of Prisons should be, of course, a nonpartisan agency, and they should be working with both Republicans and Democrats in oversight, and that's been their long tradition. And if they choose to not engage with us now, that is a serious escalation as far as I'm concerned. Donald Trump is not always going to be the president of the United States. And I think what's also important at this moment, and why it's so critical that the full Epstein files are released, is that as Ms. Maxwell and her attorneys are maneuvering with the DOJ, we need to be able to know what the facts are. What did Ms. Maxwell know? What was she actually involved with? If she's going to actually give any type of deposition or testimony, whether it's to the Supreme Court, as we know she's trying to appeal on right now, or to the committee, which she's going to do sometime after September now, according to James Comer, we have to be able to corroborate that information with what's actually in the files. And every day, I think this Epstein saga gets more disturbing, more bizarre, and all signs point back to Donald Trump. What did he know? What's he covering up? Why is this all this new information kind of developing and coming out about his time with Epstein at Mar-a-Lago? So we have a lot of questions, but I'm convinced with all the information we're getting now that we're going to get to the truth and release it to the public.
Let me ask you about, I mean, you came on, we talked about this on our show, like around the time, maybe the night of the oversight, the subcommittee on the Oversight Committee voting to subpoena these documents. And James Comer has not yet issued the subpoena. You called for him to do it immediately then. When do you expect him to sign it? And is there anything that can be done if he decides he doesn't want to anymore?
So we have been actually working with James Comer's team almost every day since then. We've seen language. We actually expect if he keeps his word and the committee keeps their word, we expect that subpoena to actually be out the door in the next couple of days. That subpoena is significant. We think that subpoena for all the documents, we should expect that early next week is our hope that subpoena will be out. It's obviously pretty extensive. It matches what we actually put forward in a motion. And so that will be a significant step forward. And then once that subpoena is out, then of course, it's all about getting the documents. What we don't know yet, and we're asking James Comer and the committee this question is, has he set an amount of time to actually receive the documents back? We had suggested 30 days. We think that's plenty of time for the DOJ to get the videos and the files and any documents related to this case. And so we're going to wait and see what James Comer has to say there, that we do expect the subpoena out in the next few days.
That would certainly be a significant development. I think everybody watching is probably happy to hear that you've been working closely with his team, which is also a big development. Let me ask you, we only have about a minute left, but you mentioned this. James Comer also said today that he's willing to agree to Ghislaine Maxwell's request to postpone her deposition for the committee until after the Supreme Court decides whether to take up her appeal, which pushes it to late September. It sounds like you've been working with his team. Are you concerned about that, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, we are. I mean, look, I think that's something that we just don't agree with. There are two other things in that letter that I think the committee we worked together on. We all agreed there should be no immunity for Ms. Maxwell. That's been the case. We all agreed that she should not get the questions ahead of time. We agreed there. Where we disagree is this pushing back the deposition past the Supreme Court appeals date, which will be the end of September, as we know. At the end of the day, they're in the majority. They're able to set those rules. So we're pushing back on that, but that's the date that he has set for the deposition. Regardless, it gives us a little bit more time to get all of those documents in. By the way, also, Jen, as you probably know, there's a lot of, the victims and their families and the Epstein estate, there's a lot of information right now coming at us to the Oversight Committee, and we're working really hard to get that out and release it to the public.